Josh, in a new office, I'm told, with a nice background. Are you pinning your hopes on more stimulus to come before the election?
I think it would be very nice, and I think it's a much more a humanitarian story than a stock market story. The vast majority of people who have lost their jobs, while very important to the country and to the economy, the stock market has almost completely written off their participation in the names that matter most, the biggest weighted companies. It's almost as if they're not unemployed. It's one of the saddest aspects of the recovery we're having. So I think only fiscal action can help these people. The Fed cannot do it. There's nothing that we can play around with interest rates or stimulus or buying corporate bonds. None of that is getting to these people. The government absolutely must act. But I don't think the stock market requires it. And again, this is one of those sad dichotomies that exist right now. But let me give you some good news. The home builders are absolutely on fire on that pending home sales number from this morning. This has been a trend I have been pounding the table on pretty much for the last 6 months on this show, almost every week. Look at Lennar, Pulte, D.R. Horton. What do you want? Look what these things are doing right now. And that extends, of course, to the Home Depots. I also want to mention, hard to be bearish with the IPO ETF, not only seeing record supply coming on the market, but making new highs in price. So all of these deals that you guys talk about all day, every day, they are not swamping the demand that exists, at least not so far. Last thing, monster bounce in the semis. NVIDIA is an absolute beast. Intel wants to close that gap from the post-earnings puke. A lot of good things happening in large cap tech. Google is the laggard, but the rest of them all had a really nice recovery week. UPS and FedEx not giving up any gains. Those charts are immaculate. And so when you've got all of those things looking the way they do, it's hard to have a frown on your face right now.
No, right. Transports, semis, all good. Even home builders, leading indicators for the economy. Let's hit some fiscal stimulus. Some people want it. Some people need it, as you mentioned. Let's hit Delivering Alpha. Starwood's Barry Sternlicht, joining CNBC's Delivering Alpha conference this morning, gave his take on how the market might react to a Democratic sweep on Election Day. Listen.
Maybe long-term, 2-3 years out, the Democratic sweep would be okay. But short-term, with the change in capital gains taxes, I think you'd see a pretty significant correction in high-flying stocks.
Josh, is that a potential headwind to some of your good news that you're seeing out there for the market?
That high-flying stocks would do what on a Democratic
that
sweep of the election?
Democratic sweep, Senate and presidency would hurt the markets in the short term, especially the high-flying tech stocks. That was his point.
Anything can hurt the markets in the short term. We had an episode 5 years ago this week where there was an overnight repricing in the yuan, and the S&P 500 fell 12%. Like 3 days later, it was like it never happened. Anything, including an election, can do short-term damage to the market, but nobody has a gun to your head telling you have to react to it. So one of the biggest money losers in Wall Street history has been A, trying to determine an election in advance, and B, trying to determine how the crowd will react once that election goes in the way that you think it will. Nobody does this. Go find a fund manager who profitably does this reliably. Can't do it. So I don't play that game. I spend half my day lately talking clients out of attempting to play that game. It doesn't work, never has worked, won't work this time.
Josh, just quickly want to pivot back to something you said before about the semis looking great. You're not concerned by Micron today, down 6 or 7%?
I think Micron's got some idiosyncrasies that make that kind of an insulated, isolated situation. I don't know that I want to trade other semiconductors based on anything going on with Micron. They're in a highly specific corner of the semi space, and you pay attention. But when I look at the vast majority of not only semi-capital equipment names, these charts are up and to the right, and they're being bought at highs. Accumulation is continuing. Some of them are a little bit overbought. When you look at things like RSI, okay, we can take a chill pill. We don't have to have stocks that go up, 15% every week. But the vast majority of the semis look great. And by the way, I think they're way more important an indicator of the economic recovery than transports, for example. Much, much more important these days. They might be the new transport.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.